Sorry, I'm muted. I was not prepared to start stream. When am I ever? Hello, everybody. Let's see who's here. Lurking Yoshi, welcome in. Congrats on getting first. Kintran, welcome in. Crusader, welcome in. How's everybody doing today? I can get rid of the book in the corner. So today we are reading Tired But Good. Yay. Today we are reading a new book. I got it at the book fair that I went to on Friday. You can find nothing about it online. Like, literally nothing. It's not even in Project Gutenberg. Sorry, I have food. Let me put my food away. So we're safe. I got home from work late, so. Hi, DT. Yeah, if you Google this book, it's called Romances of Fanland. You type it in and it's literally like, did you mean Romances of Finland? And then you say, or stories told to Violett with 2 T's. It wants to correct it. An AI over, this is hilarious. Okay. The AI overview is Romances of Finland or Stories Told to Violett is a book of stories, likely focusing on Finnish culture and traditions, with a romantic element and a focus on a character named Violett. The stories are intended to be told to or shared with Violett. The book is described as having a blue diagonal fine ribbon cloth cover with gold and white stamping, as well as end papers with a moire pattern. This is literally not it at all. This is hilarious. The only actual place... Hi, Faded Night. Welcome in. The only place I can find it online is if you type it in, it comes up under the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's in their library, which you can apparently download. Hi, I'm doing well. How are you? So, like, and it doesn't even say what it's about. So, we're gonna just read it. We're just gonna read it and see what it is. Let's see. Can I start a poll? I'm gonna start a poll. If I can figure out where's my... Wait. Wrong thing. Hold on. I gotta go to my stream manager. I can't even manage myself. Let's see. Community. Content? Nope. Activity? Nope. Viewer rewards? Nope. Streaming tools? Nope. Where do I do a poll? I know it's there. Where is it? I'm under Stream Manager. How does one do a poll here? I think I could do it from my phone. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Create a new poll. Question. Will this book be good or bad? Good. Terrible. Um, okay, start poll. We'll say 10 minutes to let people come in. Okay, you can predict. Just will it be good or bad? Go ahead and vote. Good or terrible? No need to wager points. Okay. Let me see. What we have here. Okay. Let's begin. So the book. Okay, we've got 2 saying good, 1 saying terrible. We don't have many people in yet. That's okay. So the book is purplish. It's kind of a pretty purple. It's actually the same color as the first stripe up at the top with below the trees are. It's the same color as that. Okay, so the book is from 1906. Oh my god, they put a sticker on the inside. How dare you? How dare you? That damaged it. It has a very nice texture. It smells, oh, it has that old book smell. Welcome in, Darth. Please take the poll. Oh, it has that old book smell. Okay. The book is called Romances of Fanland, or Stories Told to Violett, by Mignotte Violett Whelen. And it was published in Philadelphia from Griffith and Rowland Press in 1906. Yeah, copyright 1906 by Mrs. Charles S. Whelen, published in March of 1906. So this book is over 100 years old. It has, oh, it does have gilt edges. The top is gilt, the rest of it is not. Intriguing, very dirty gilt. I wonder if I could clean it. Dedicated to my best inspiration, my daughter. And then a little note from the author. May these stories, told to my own little girl to while away tedious hours of railway travel, beguile many other little mind into the realms of make-believe, where small folks always love to enter, and where older people oft-times long for little hands to lead them. Oh, that's adorable. That's so cute. So I guess this is going to be a children's book? Chapter 1. These are the contents, actually. Introduction. Story of the Spanish fan. Story of the feather fan. Story of the lace fan. Story of the painted fan. Story of the little cross fan. And story of the Chinese fan. Introduction. I wonder how many of my little readers have seen Tiffany's beautiful shop in New York. It is well worth a visit, if only to see the rare jewels, the fine silver and china, and the many art treasures gathered together from all parts of the world. There are to be found there at all times. These are to be found there at all times. But in the year 1892, the firm announced as their Christmas attraction a great exhibition of fans. Agents had been abroad for 2 years collecting rare and valuable specimens, old fans with histories, fans perhaps too new to have any, fans for brides and debutantes, fans for art collectors, in fine, fans for all tastes, from all countries in the world. Curiosity was great among Tiffany's wealthy customers, for heretofore in New York there had been only loan collections of fans, while these were to be for sale after the exhibition. Space on the second floor of the great shop had been given up for the exhibition, which was to open December 20th, and here on the evening before, after the shop was closed for the night, 4 men were busily employed arranging the fans in their showcases. This required much time and taste, as each must be shown off to the greatest advantage. All were placed on little wire stands made for the occasion, and in the largest case were put the rarest and most beautiful. So we've got like a exposition of fans or something. Then, after the men had locked the cases and gone home, a strange thing happened. The fans all began talking at once. Some said they were cold out of their boxes. Some complained of homesickness so far away from their native land. Some were very glad to look around and air themselves. Some were very uncomfortable, stretched out on their stands. Others were wondering who their purchasers would be, whether it would be a pretty debutante who at her first compliment would hide her sweet blushes by the aid of their slender shelter, or whether they would belong to some fair young bride who would whisper loving words to her happy husband behind their painted frames. Others, again, were worrying over the likelihood of their falling into the hands of some vain old woman to be used only to shield her weak eyes, powdered face, and wrinkles from the glare of gas or firelight. Or, worse still, would they be bought by some wicked gossip, and be doomed to hear of nothing but evil doings and ugly stories, they who prided themselves on their dainty loveliness? Surely they were made to hear of only good and beautiful things, and some of them sighed at such a prospect. Some little Spanish fans here interrupted by asking if anybody could tell whether the American girls knew how to flirt with a fan as the Spanish girls do. If not, they feared their lives would be very dull in America. "Well, it is no use borrowing trouble," said a matter-of-fact little fan. "And as we have a long time to wait, I think it would be nice if some of you fans from foreign lands that have a history would tell us the story of your lives." "Oh, yes, that would be nice," said most of the others. "But who shall begin?" The white feather fan, being the largest and considering herself the most important, was the first to volunteer. But as she made herself quite unpopular by her arrogance and unsociability, the fans were not predisposed to listen to her. They felt that anyone so grand and haughty could not have a history that would appeal to them. The situation was becoming embarrassing when a matter-of-fact little fan suggested that a vote be taken as to who should begin. The choice fell upon a gay-looking Spanish fan, whose brightly pictured scene of a bullfight and peasants in costumes of every color attracted all eyes, and the fans felt sure her story would be exciting enough to keep them awake. So asking her to begin, they all at once became attentive. I'm going to see if I can find a picture of these different fans. So the cover has the Spanish fan, the feather fan, and another one. I think one of the painted ones. Let's see. I should probably announce that I'm live. The Spanish fans. I've been waiting to catch us through. Oh, the video games. It was Control. Have you read the Discworld novels? A long time ago, yes. I enjoyed them very much. You couldn't find the toilet? Let me see if there's a... Wow, there's so many different designs. I don't think there are any different. Let me see. Spanish fans. Painted gold. Okay, so here's one. Ooh, okay, here's a fan. I'm gonna download this. I don't know. It's been so long. I liked the Discworld books. So I'm not sure, like, if I would say worse or better than the others. I just enjoyed them. Okay, here is... This is vaguely what the Spanish fan would look like. Let's put this over here. That's vaguely. So you've got the bullfighting scene and such with the peasants around it. So that's vaguely what this one would look like. Chapter 2, The Story of the Spanish Fan. Mine is a love story full of dancing, sunshine, flowers, pretty feats, and moonlight serenades, and I will give you an account of a bullfight that will keep you awake, I warrant. Oh, how exciting! They cried. What fun! To begin with, I must tell you that I once belonged to the Queen of Spain, but that part of my life was very dull because she never used me. She had such a collection of fans and had bought me as a pretty piece of workmanship of one of her artist subjects, and then I was put away and my existence forgotten. Life only began for me when I came into the possession of my lovely Pepita. Oh, the bullfights she took me to, the parties where she used me to flirt with. No one could use a fan like Pepita. Even her rival, the saucy Inez, acknowledged that. It used to make the hearts of the young village beaux go pit-a-pat when she threw them a glance out of the corner of her glorious brown eyes over the top of me. But there, I am anticipating. I must go back and tell you how I came into the possession of the pretty Pepita. At this point, the Spanish fan asked the others to come nearer. It will do you all good, she continued, to get off your stands and lie at my feet. I feel quite stiff from being stretched out all evening, and I suppose you feel the same. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, I remember. About Pepita. Let me begin by telling you how she was dressed the first time I made her acquaintance. What a little beauty she was. She was in holiday attire, a bright yellow skirt over which was draped a flowered silk shawl, first wrapped around her shoulders, crossed at the waist, and caught there with bright red flowers. The same flowers were in her hair, bunched low behind her ear. Her neck was covered with cheap bead necklaces of different colors, and heavy gold earrings were in her ears. Her lips were as red as her flowers, and her eyes sparkled with consciousness born of the pride I think she felt, and the ownership of two heirlooms. One, a really handsome tortoise-shell comb left her by her mother, the other a fan which had belonged to a great-great-grandmother who had been a famous danseuse in her day. "Oh," cried the fans, "that was you! How interesting to have belonged to a celebrity, and a ballet dancer at that!" And here a frivolous little French fan that had taken a prize at last year's Salon began humming the ballet music from Faust. "But you are mistaken," cried the Spanish fan. "I was not that fan. I never even saw it, at least not in its glory. When I did see it, it was broken and bent out of shape and covered with blood stains." At this, the little gauze fans shivered and nestled closer under the protecting plumes of the feather fan. "But," continued the Spanish fan, "again I am anticipating. I must tell you this. From our point of view, according to the description I heard of her, she could never have been a pretty fan, but was, no doubt, a curious one." Here the fans in the case that were curious and not beautiful grunted their disapprobation. The Spanish fan, hearing it, became quite embarrassed for fear she had been rude, but the feather fan reassured her and begged her to continue, saying, "I have traveled around the world and probably may have seen one like it." "She thinks she knows everything," the little pink feather fan then whispered to the painted fan. "Well, I will describe it. The sticks of the fan were made of solid silver arrows. The points ran down, and the wide or feathered parts of the arrows gave the width at the top. Perhaps its beauty lay in the odd chasing on the silver sticks. The effect of the fan when closed was of many arrows bunched together. It was very heavy, as you may imagine. It could not have been very useful. Have any of you ever seen one like it?" At this question, a little fan in a faraway corner of the case, whom no one had noticed all day, approached the Spanish fan and said, "Perhaps I can explain the origin of this fan. Look at me." Immediately every fan was looking critically at the tiny fan that was now the observed of all observers. "My style," she said, "originated, I think, during the Empire, and I was considered the finest example of the arrow fan that Mr. Tiffany's agent could find in Europe. I was discovered in an antiquity shop in Fontainebleau. For 3 days they disputed about the price. It was tiresome and trying to me, because I feared I would not be bought, and I was excited about getting away from a trip to an unknown country. I had been in the old shop for years, brought there by an impoverished granddaughter of the Duchess who owned me. My style of fan was all the rage at court in those days. Ooh, let's see. A arrow fan. Let's see if we can look up a copy of that. Nope, that's not. Let me try it this way. Arrow fan. Antique. Nope. Antique arrow hand fan. Oh, wait, no. I can't. I don't see one like what they're describing in my search. I can see what they mean. Like I'm picturing like the stick part is an arrow. But I don't. Hello, Darth Maul. Welcome to class. Thank you for the follow. We've got two Darths in here. I don't see arrow. I don't see this type of fan. We are reading a book called, I should have put it up at the top. We are reading a book called Romances of Fanland, or Stories Told to Violett. It's a book from 1906. There's like nothing about it online. I bought it on Friday at a book fair, and it's very bizarre. So far, it's a bunch of fans at an exposition, and they're telling each other stories. Oh, exclaimed the fans, how fascinating you do look. With your amber sticks so encrusted with gold work, you seem to be made of solid gold. You are beautiful and perhaps have a thrilling history. Not at all, replied the little arrow fan. I never had an adventure in my life, and I have always belonged to aristocratic but perfectly commonplace people. Now, for the first time, I have realized that fans could have adventures. I have never associated with other fans. I have never been broken, because scarcely ever carried, and therefore I have never had even the excitement of being sent to a shop to be mended, where I might have seen something of fan society. I have always lived in a lovely box on the top of the shelf of an old wardrobe, and I have only been taken out on grand occasions. I realized I was a rare piece of workmanship, and therefore would be guarded too carefully to have anything exciting happen to me. The great Napoleon once admired me. Taking me in his hand, he said to my owner, Duchess, this is a very pretty bauble. That is the only event in my dull life worth recalling, except the way in which I was purchased, and the excitement of meeting with you all, and of hearing your delightful histories. Then suddenly the little arrow fan became self-conscious, and made many apologies for having interrupted the Spanish fan, who politely assured her it was but a pleasant incident, as her uniqueness had but served to illustrate an unknown style, which would now enable them to picture to themselves the large and heavy imitation of her dainty, gold-encrusted little self. Okay, so maybe if I put in that time, okay. Napoleon era. No? Wait, what's this? No. I can't find any. Like, what? I'm gonna have to, like, research these. What's that? Okay, so 19th, let's see, 19th century. Watch this type of fan not exist. This? No, it's not that either. Okay, well, whatever. Let's continue reading. Here the cross little fan got awake, and taking one peep at the little arrow fan, said, I could have told you all about that style of fan, for my best friend in the cabinet with me in my old home was a counterpart of this one, and she had had adventures galore. Whereupon she grew too sleepy to say any more, and soon returned to the land of dreams. The Spanish fan again took up the thread of her story, saying, Well, I could not appreciate the silver arrow fan then, for as I told you, it was bent and broken and stained with blood when I saw it, and if it had not been in that condition, I should not have belonged to Pepita. Oh, please don't preamble, exclaimed the other fans. It will be daylight before you finish, and we want the Chinese fan's story, for today I overheard 2 men talking about her, and we heard just enough to know she has a fascinating history, so please get through as quickly as possible. Well, I have described this quaint silver arrow fan so minutely because it was the means of saving a brave man's life. Here there was a chorus of, Oh, indeed! Just think of a fan doing such a wonderful thing, we who are only supposed to be ornamental. You remember, the Spanish fan continued, that I told you Pepita carried this fan with her the day she went to the bullfight. Her old aunt, who had given her the fan, was her escort to the Plaza del Toro, and from here on I will tell you the story just as I heard it told that evening by this same aunt to the neighbors as they crowded the room of a small cottage to hear the wonderful things that had happened to their little Pepita, who was sitting so modestly in their midst, a real heroine of a real romance. She was holding me, not the silver arrow fan, proudly in her little hands. Now don't interrupt, I am coming to myself in a minute, but I wish to thrill you all as I was thrilled when I heard the part of the silver arrow fan had played in the day's doings. It seems that Pepita and her aunt had arrived rather late, and the only 2 seats left were those on the lowest row nearest the fence that enclosed the arena. But as their seats were rather near the Queen's box, which was filled with visiting royalties, Pepita was delighted with them. It was the Queen's birthday, and the bullfight had been arranged for the entertainment of her guests. Ah, what a gay scene it was! The royal band was playing, red and yellow flags were flying everywhere, the brilliant uniforms of the soldiers, the dark robes of the priests, the gaily embroidered shawls of the women, their picturesque mantillas and the constant fluttering of innumerable fans created a picture of such color and movement, of such brilliancy and warmth, that Pepita gasped with excitement and pleasure. It would shock you, dainty fans, too much were I to tell you how the aunt described the way the picadors, the chulos, and the banderilleros tortured the ferocious bull that was soon let loose in the arena. First, he was maddened by darts thrust into his neck by the banderilleros, and was wrought up to such fury that soon, worn out by his exertions and loss of blood, he showed signs of weakness. Then came the most interesting part, the reappearance on the scene of the toreador, the brave Mignotte, the hero of many bullfights and the idol of the hour. When he left the barrier and stood, this time on foot, with his long rapier in one hand, and in the other a square of scarlet cloth, and the crowd recognized his graceful figure, a deafening roar of applause greeted him. With great dignity he bowed to the royal box, then to the crowd. The aunt said she knew every girl there had her eyes fixed on him, and loud were the cries of "Good luck to you, Manuelo," and "Viva Manuelo," and some crossed themselves and murmured a prayer for his safety. The aunt thought Pepita would faint at the first charge of the bull, when Manuelo tantalized him with the red banner. Well, pretty soon the toreador needed all the prayers he could get, for the bull seemed to have taken a new lease of life, and obstinately charged upon Manuelo, who twice had escaped his mad rushes with wonderful nerve and presence of mind. Cheers of encouragement went up from many thousand throats each time he avoided the catch. "Drive thy sword into him, Manuelo," they yelled, and Manuelo, poising his sword on high, and waving the red cloth with his left hand, buried his weapon to the hilt between the bull's left shoulder and the spine. The queen rose in her box and waved her bright scarf, thinking the bull had been killed. But no, the thrust had not reached his heart, and he was more enraged than ever. Manuelo had barely time to seize another sword from one of the attendants when the bull was at him again. Suddenly there were hoarse cries of, "Danger, Manuelo! Be careful, he is upon thee!" But with that quick grace of movement for which he was noted, he again avoided the charge of the bull. Yells of delight and of renewed hope filled the air, but were as quickly turned into groans of despair and horror, for Manuelo's foot slipped in a pool of blood, and down he went, with the enraged brute not far away. All was over with their idol now. Nothing could save him, they thought, when what do you think happened? Pepita, who had been watching every movement of Manuelo, had realized previous to his fall that he was jumping aside much less alertly, and that his breathing seemed painful. Her one desire was to help him, and as he had fallen directly in front of the barrier where she was seated, she leaned far over and called loudly, "Courage, Manuelo!" She saw the bull gather himself up for another charge, but she also saw that he was weak and staggering as he made for Manuelo. So standing up on the seat, she took a good aim, and with all the strength she possessed, threw something straight at the bull just before it reached Manuelo. Whatever it was, it struck the target, that is, the bull's eye, and the bull, throwing his head up with blinding pain, was diverted long enough for Manuelo to regain his feet, and again to plant in the body of the bleeding animal another sword, which this time reached a vital part, and Manuelo's life was saved. Now did pandemonium reign. Deafening cheers rent the air, handkerchiefs were waving, caps were flying. Such excitement had never been witnessed in all the annals of bullfighting, for the ending had been most unusual. It took some time for the crowd to realize what had happened to save their idol from seemingly certain death. Only the people nearest Pepita and one of the picadors had seen what she had done. The picador whispered it to Manuelo, who, with a comprehensive glance at the excited girl still standing in her seat, stooped and picked up the instrument that had saved his life. Expecting to find a stiletto, what was his astonishment to find, instead, the broken and bent sticks of a silver arrow fan. In an instant he was bowing low to the blushing Pepita, and holding the fan high above his head, he commanded silence. Almost immediately the crowd realized he had something to say, and eagerly listened. "See, your majesty, and my friends, this silver fan is the instrument that has saved my life, for I confess that when I slipped I was at the mercy of the bull. And there stands the brave girl who threw it to such purpose." Then turning, he threw a kiss to Pepita and put the fan next to his heart. As he was leaving the arena, he passed the place where Pepita was standing with her aunt at her side. Manuelo gave her a look of understanding and something else which the aunt said she understood, if Pepita did not. Well, of course, this sentimental turn of affairs delighted the romantic Spaniards. The visiting royalties thought the whole thing had been arranged especially for their entertainment. Shouts of "Brava" for Pepita filled the air. Poor child. She was overwhelmed with confusion when she realized the whole crowd was trying to get a peep at her. She turned and fled, but the aunt soon caught up to her and made her sit down until her agitation should pass and the crowd should disperse. I shall hydrate, thank you. Thoughts on the story so far for those who are still awake? I hate bullfights, by the way. I really don't like them. Poor child, she was overwhelmed with confusion when she realized that the whole crowd was trying to get a peep at her. She turned and fled, but the aunt soon caught up to her and made her sit down until her agitation should pass and the crowd should disperse. The aunt was looking for the nearest exit when she saw a man approaching. the sight of whom Pepita turned pale, for she had an idea he meant to arrest her. But addressing her most kindly, he said that Her Majesty the Queen had summoned her to the royal box. Pepita heard the command only, and shook with fear as she followed him. Was the Queen going to reprove her publicly for meddling with that which was not her affair? The aunt, too, was flustered and anxious, and followed Pepita with her eyes. Soon she saw the child kneeling at the feet of the Queen, who was smiling most graciously upon her, and evidently saying kind things. Just here in the midst of narrating the story to the wondering neighbors, the aunt suddenly requested Pepita to go on with it herself. Pepita did so, and told how charming the Queen had been, and how quickly her fears had been dispelled as she looked up into Her Majesty's lovely face. She wanted to know Pepita's name and where she lived, and, bidding her rise, said, "I am glad your thoughtfulness and quick action have saved a valuable life, the life of a subject of whom Madrid is justly proud. And Madrid will be proud also of the pretty little maiden who acted so promptly in a moment of great peril to the toreador. We have been told that the missile which proved so fatal to the bull was only a silver arrow fan, and we have requested that it be shown to us. Tell us about it, and how you came by it." When Pepita had finished telling her story about the fan, a grand gentleman next to the Queen smiled and said, "Beware, little one, lest a more dangerous arrow than thy fan do not pierce the heart of the brave toreador." At this the Queen and her other guests laughed heartily. Pepita was then dismissed, and the Queen gave her her hand to kiss, saying, "My child, you shall not suffer by the loss of your fan, for I shall send you one out of my own private collection to replace it, and to be a constant reminder of this day." Here the little fans interrupted in concert, "Oh, were you the fan the Queen of Spain sent to Pepita?" "Yes, I am, and a prouder little maid than she was could not have been found that night in old Madrid, for in an incredibly short time after leaving Her Majesty's presence, a royal messenger arrived at Pepita's lowly home and presented me to her with great ceremony. The chance of my life to be admired had come. Amidst the gratifying compliments of the neighbors who had gathered at Pepita's house, I was passed from hand to hand while their excited faces bent in astonished wonder above me, and the ivory box in which I came, whereon was blazoned the royal coat of arms. You can easily imagine my great pleasure at being the object of so much interest. At last I was impressed with my own importance. You see, the silver fan had been such a heroine, I felt quite insignificant. My adventures were beginning. Pepita's neighbors were looking at me with awe, and seemed proud to be allowed to hold in their hands anything that had just come from the royal presence. The little maid was petted and complimented, and the notoriety she had achieved at the bullfight was talked over and wondered at. How could one so shy suddenly become so courageous and so quick to act? Pepita blushed and said she did not know what had made her do it. It was all so quickly done, but she was glad she had saved a life. At this they began teasing her about Manuelo, and expressed their surprise that he was not among the friendly crowd that surrounded her. In truth, Pepita looked around expectantly, though shyly, for him, and for one other, her envious neighbor, the vain Inez, the belle of their street, whom Pepita longed to have witnessed the sensation she was creating. I heard some girls back of Pepita say, "You need not look for Inez. She will not come to congratulate you. She is furious at the turn of affairs in your favor today at the bullfight. She knows the toreador Manuelo. We heard her boast that he had danced with her once at a fiesta, and we saw her today waiting on the Plaza del Toro for a word with him, but he never looked at her." "Ah, Pepita, she will never forgive you for saving his life." Now, my friends, when I heard this, I hoped with all my heart that my little peasant mistress would cut her out with the gallant toreador. Pepita then begged to be excused. Begged to be excused. She was so worn out with the excitement of the day, and she longed to be alone to think it all over, this most important day of her life. When she reached her room, she took me out of her box and covered me with kisses and cried, "Oh, you beautiful fan, I know you will bring me good luck. You must lie under my pillow and bring me sweet dreams of—" Of course, you can guess it was Manuelo she wanted to dream about. "Hello, rabbits are coming. Welcome in." Oh, I dang, I replied to a comment 18 minutes ago. That's embarrassing. That's fine. That's fine. Soon my new little mistress was fast asleep. I could not follow her example, for I was too excited. I was wide awake, wondering very naturally whether I was going to like my change of quarters. I cannot say I had been happy at the palace, for I had been out of my box but once since the Queen had bought me from a needy artist, not only as a fine specimen of workmanship, but because he had painted on my back the portrait of the Queen and her 2 daughters. "Oh, do turn yourself around and let us see their pictures," the other fans said, and the little American-made fans were quite excited to see the picture of a real queen. After being fully admired, the Spanish fan continued. "That's true, rabbits. Of course I was longing for adventures, and I thought any change would be better than the dull life I had been leading. I was just settling myself to sleep when I heard the sound of guitar and the richest baritone voice singing. Ah, what a love song it was! The owner was pouring forth his soul in an abandonment of melody. I wanted to awaken Pepita, especially as the words of the song came floating upward so distinctly. La boca de mi Pepita es más dulce que panal. I can't pronounce Spanish. I'm sorry to all my Spanish listeners. And I realized the song was for her. He had sung a whole verse before she became conscious of that the song was not part of her dream. But when she did realize it, with a jump, she was out of her bed, running to the window, where she suddenly stopped and gave a deep sigh. I heard it from under my pillow. I was wondering why she did not open her window when her aunt entered and said, "Pepita, someone is serenading thee." "No, tia mia, it is not for me. There is a light in Inez's window opposite. Look, she is now opening her casement. Let us stand back." But just then the serenade began again, La boca de mi Pepita, in a much louder voice, and there was no mistaking for whom it was meant now, for his face was turned upward toward Pepita's window, which she opened softly, and peeping through the flowers, I heard her say, "He is standing in the moonlight directly below my window, my hero Manuelo, looking so handsome, and his song is for me, for me. Shall I throw him one of my flowers to let him know that I hear him?" She must have thrown the flower, for I heard her say, "He has picked it up and is kissing it, tia mia, and now he is moving away, looking quite satisfied." And then she gave a happy little laugh, and I felt that she and her aunt understood the situation, and so I fell asleep, quite contented and quite sure that the envious Inez had had her day. Well, my dear friends, the day is dawning, and I must skip many of the details of my story. Their courtship, for instance, for they had many opportunities of meeting at the fiestas and dances, where I was always carried and my story always retold. I enjoyed myself hugely listening to Manuelo's love-making behind the shelter of my slender sticks, and I was taken to a bullfight once where Manuelo was again victor. But what I loved best of all was when Manuelo sang to his guitar beneath Pepita's latticed window. I have often wondered whether the love songs of other countries are as pretty as the Spanish. The words of them lend themselves so charmingly to love-making, meaning flirting and professing love, not what it means today. Pepita and Manuelo were married at the end of 6 months. Never had there been such a wedding in that suburban village. Everything was so gay. Of course, I was carried hanging at Pepita's side on a beautiful chain, the gift of Manuelo. Soon after the wedding, Manuelo had a letter containing a good offer for a certain number of appearances in a show at the Chicago World's Fair, where it was purposed carrying out as like as possible the bullfights of Spain. His contract at home had just expired, and as he had spent his money so freely, he was most anxious to accept the offer. He was also dazzled by the account of how easily money was made in America. His friends advised him to accept, thinking it would mean new triumphs for their idol, and that he would come back a rich man from that wonderful America, where gold was so plentiful. Pepita, too, was most anxious to take a trip like this for their honeymoon, so it was decided that they should sail in 2 weeks' time. Were you taken along?" the other fans asked. "Why, of course. You don't suppose Pepita ever separated from me?" "Then how did you get into this exhibition?" they all exclaimed. "Oh, do hurry, it is striking 5 o'clock, and the men will be here soon to open the shop." "Well," continued the Spanish fan, I am very sorry to tell you the bullfights were never allowed to take place at the Chicago exhibition. They were prevented by a society called the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They made such an awful row about it, and the whole show had to be given up. SPCA. You see, the American people treat animals much better than they do in most of the countries abroad, and I hear it is all due to this society, which has its branches in all large cities. They have the law on their side, so they are a great power. Of course, I had never thought bullfights cruel. I had just regarded them as the Spaniards do. You can imagine Manuelo's disgust and disappointment, for not only was his pride hurt, but he had staked all on this as a method of earning a livelihood. He could get no redress from the manager, for he too had lost everything by the venture. Dear friends, it would take too long to tell you of all their trials and hard struggles through those weary summer months. No friends, no influence, they could not speak English, and consequently they found themselves being cheated out of their money, which was dwindling every day. If they had decided at once to return to Spain, they would have had enough money to pay for their homeward passage. This they failed to do. Manuelo's only means of earning money was singing Spanish songs, accompanied by his guitar, in the different cafes on the Midway Plaisance. It was very hard always to have to sing when his heart was sad, and he was so worried about his pretty Pepita, who was growing so pale and ill with homesickness. Manuelo came home one night quite excited. He told Pepita he had been singing in one of the pleasure gardens, and very near him had sat a party of fine signors and signorinas, that they seemed to recognize the songs he sang, and one of the gentlemen spoke Spanish. All this had made Manuelo very happy. The gentleman had such a kind face, Pepita mia, said Manuelo, that I had half a mind to tell him our troubles. But just then they all rose to go. However, the kind gentleman asked me if he would engage me to go with him on his yacht the next day, as he was giving a boating party in honor of— Now whom do you think, Pepita? Why, our own Spanish princess, Eulalie, the sister-in-law of our queen. Well, you can imagine what an excitement this created. Someone had told them the princess was coming over to visit the fair, but they did not know when she would be there or whether they would see her. She was in the royal box the day the queen had promised me to Pepita, the day of Manuelo's victory. For the first time in months they went to sleep happy. Pepita felt that this engagement was a turn for the better in their affairs. He was promised $25 for his music, and that was a good deal, and perhaps he might have an opportunity to speak to the princess and beg her influence to have them sent back to Madrid. The following day Manuelo was obliged for the first time to leave Pepita alone. She was lonely and homesick. I heard her crying. Then I heard her praying to her patron saint. A little while after this I heard her say, "Oh, if only I dared." Then she took me out of the trunk, and without opening my box, I was put in her pocket. Soon I knew we were on the street. What was she going to do with me? I was awfully nervous. When I was taken out of my box, I looked around and felt quite dazed. Were we back in Spain? Everything looked so familiar. All the surroundings were Spanish. The gentleman Pepita was talking to was speaking Spanish. My friends, I almost jumped out of my box with pleasure. "Well, do tell us where you found yourself," exclaimed the other fans. "Why, it was in the Spanish department of one of the big buildings at the World's Fair, the main building it was called, and I soon heard Pepita telling the story of their disappointment. Looking up, I saw a very sympathetic face full of interest in the sad story, so sweetly and simply told. I felt she was fast making a friend. She then unfolded her plan, which was to sell me. Yes, I was startled at this, my friends, but I knew how poor they were and how they longed for home, and my one hope was to be the means of enabling them to return." Here the painted fan whispered to the Spanish fan, "Oh, what a noble heart you have! I am glad you felt that way. I hope virtue had its own reward." "It seldom has," proudly said the feather fan, "and I am glad I have never been put to any self-sacrifice. But pray continue," she said with great condescension. Well, I was left with the sympathetic gentleman for 2 days. Many people admired me and listened to my story with great interest, especially Mr. Tiffany's agent, who came back 3 times to look at me. He had already bought 2 old Spanish fans. There they are in the opposite showcase, and so he did not feel justified in paying so large a price as the exhibitor asked, but he promised to return the next afternoon with Mr. Tiffany's answer.
He was going to write and tell him what an important fan I was, as I had once been in the Queen of Spain's rare collection, so I had to wait another 24 hours before knowing my fate. I did not want to be... Ooh! Hello, welcome to class. Let's see. Siberius Wraith, I missed you. Welcome in. And Generic MC, welcome to class. Thank you for the follow. Both of you. Sorry, I missed the other one. We are reading Romances of Fanland. I did not want to be bought for a fan show in America. I longed to go back to Spain. How I hoped and prayed a Spanish maiden might see me and buy me before Tiffany's agent came back in the afternoon. And oh, my friends, my prayers were answered, for who do you think came to see me the next morning? Now be prepared for a surprise, for it was none other than the Princess Eulalie. I recognized her the moment she looked in the case where I was spread out against a lovely piece of old violet-colored brocade. I was put into her hands at once, and she looked at me a long time. Finally, she said, "This is very beautiful. It is a genuine Spanish fan. Has it a history? If so, and you can guarantee it, I have a mind to buy it and take it back to the land of its birth." Her husband objected, saying, "You have more fans at home than you know what to do with, especially Spanish ones. Why not buy an American-made fan?" The narrator's a fan. Literally. Yes, the narrator is a fan. Every character in this book is a fan. The one you see on my screen right now, that is the Spanish fan, or vaguely what she looks like, who's telling the story. Here my heart sank, for with the remark, "Perhaps you are right," she was about to turn away when the exhibitor said, "Your Highness, this fan has a history, and one that I feel will interest you, for it belonged to Her Royal Highness, your sister-in-law, the Queen of Spain." Well, you can imagine with what interest she listened to the story. She became so excited over the description of Pepita and Manuelo, "For," she exclaimed to the ladies and gentlemen in her party, "I remember that bullfight as though it were yesterday, and I remember seeing that little girl with her pretty scared face in her box, kneeling at the feet of the Queen. Poor little thing. I must buy the fan at once. How much do you ask for it? I will give you double the amount so that they may have plenty of money and to spare to get home." Shall I tell you what she gave for me? $200. At this moment, who should come back but Mr. Tiffany's agent with a telegram offering the purchase of the fan for $100. What was his surprise to learn it had just been bought, and that the purchaser was the Princess Eulalie. He was so disappointed, but he did not give up hope securing me for the Tiffany exhibition. He begged to be presented, and told the princess that if she were interested in fans, he hoped she would honor their store with a visit to see their wonderful collection. He told her about a few of the fans, the most important ones, the little Marie Antoinette fan and the Chinese one. Here the feather fan shook with rage that any fan could be considered more important than herself. The princess replied, "I shall be in New York next week. Shall certainly attend this exhibition, and I should like my little fan to be in such good company, as a mark of my appreciation of the many kind things done for me in America." So she promised to bring her fan with her. Now, was this not gracious? So Spanish, you know. Yes, happy Star Wars Day. It is May 4th. For you, not yet for me. I never saw anyone so pleased as the agent, pleased with the princess and quite pleased with himself and his own shrewdness. And the Princess Eulalie brought me herself the first day she was in New York, and Mr. Tiffany was so charmed with his royal visitor and her gracious offer to lend the fan that he gave an order, which I overheard, to one of the salesmen at the fan counter downstairs to observe if the princess showed a preference for any particular style of fan, and I should not be surprised if virtue again would be its own reward. At this, all of the fans looked at the proud feather fan, who pretended she did not hear. "Oh, do you think she will come tomorrow to see us?" said the new little gauze fans. "We have never been out of this country. We are so young, and the only princesses we know about are the ones in fairy tales." "Of course you will see her. When she comes tomorrow, I will let you know, and you can see for yourselves how gracious she is. I am very happy at the thought of going back to my native land, and this time I shall travel back first class." I will not make you sad by describing the parting scene between my dear Pepita and me. I had learned to love her, for she had a heart of gold, and nothing less than the great need of money to take them back to sunny Spain could have induced her to part with me. I know you will rejoice with me over Pepita's good fortune, and over my happiness in being the means of enabling her to return to the land so dear to her heart, and to which I soon will turn my steps. Thanking you for your enthusiastic interest in the account of my life, I will now ask if my next-door neighbor, the Chinese fan, will not tell us the story of her life. China has had always such a charm for me. I suppose it is partly because I know so little about it, and it seems so very far away, more like fairyland than a real country. Instantly, a clamor of voices requested the story of the Chinese fan, but so unselfish was she, and considerate of the feelings of others, she begged that the feather fan, who wore such an air of injured pride, might be asked to tell hers next. Then, with the most sympathetic manner, the Chinese fan said, "Will your feathery highness deign to tell the origin of your snow-white loveliness?" The wounded pride of the feather fan was so mollified by the delicate flattery of one whom she felt to be a personage of great importance, that she began at once with a loud voice and impressive manner. Hello, Ian. Welcome to class. Thank you for the follow. Hola, está bien. Estoy bien. You missed the story of the Spanish fan. I butchered the pronunciation. Spanish in it. I apologize. We are reading Romances of Fanland. Here. Hello, Mushroom Human. Welcome to class. How are you? I know who you are now. I'm just taking a break to eat my food. I'm mushrooming. Let me take this second to check my pet spider. He's still kind of... Oh, he moved! He's like, I tilted his cage and he hunkered down a little. I gotta get some food for him. He's doing okay, I guess. He's alive. He is alive. I was concerned that he had died, but I just moved him now and tilted his cage just a little bit, and his legs kind of adjusted. I don't know if he is or not. I don't know how long it takes him to molt. But he didn't make a little nest to molt in, and I thought they usually did that. I'm wondering if he's just dehydrated and hungry. I mean, he's not a small spider. I think he's fully grown. I've honestly never seen a full-size bull jumping spider in this house. When I lived in Connecticut, I saw them all the time and they freaked me out, and I didn't know what they were, so I unfortunately removed them from this lifeline. And I've had a few in my house before here, but they were the babies. They were juveniles. So, they were still brown. So I have no idea where this guy came from, but I love him. Okay, now I drink my water and we continue. And I'll have to pull up a picture of the feather fan. Curry sweat is delicious. Okay. So this fan is also on the cover. It's a
let's see. What kind of feather? White feather fan. Let me see if I can find a vintage one to make it more. It's kind of, yeah, that's what it looks like on the cover. It looks like a burlesque fan. Because it's a full ass feather. Hi, Waste. Welcome in. Wait, really? Oh, no, but this one's so cute. Let's see. Let me type in burlesque feather fan. I don't know if it's quite as big as that one, but it's definitely an ostrich feather. Feather fillet. No. I don't, no, I don't want to look at ostrich fan. Vintage. Okay, I think this is like what it's like. Yeah, this is what it looks like on the picture, except all literally identical to, ooh, yes, identical to this, except all white instead of some. Yeah, they are. Okay, here's the new fan. We are now talking, oh wait, why did you not save? Save image as, oh, you jerk. Nope. It won't let me save it. Trying to find one without a hand in it. But you know what? We're going to go with it. Save image as. There we go. Here we go. Here is this fan. Oh my lord, she's big. Let's shrink that down. There we go. This is the feather fan that's talking. This is like the one that's on the cover. Okay. Chapter 3, Story of the Feather Fan. Let me try to read it as pretentiously as I can. I am glad that they have given me the most prominent place in the showcase with this lovely pink crepe all banked up behind me, because I am sure I cost the most money, and I am much larger than any of you. Okay, it's definitely a burlesque fan. Oh, interrupted a queer little fan that was put in a far corner and consequently felt cross. Don't be too sure of that. The nicest people always prefer quality to quantity. At this, the feather fan became angry and showed it by swaying her long white feathers rapidly to and fro, making such a breeze that some of the little light gauze fans were almost blown off their stands. I wish you wouldn't do that again, they all screamed together. It is cold enough in here without your creating so much air. Then see that I am not ruffled again with such interruptions, said the feather fan haughtily. And if you will keep quiet, I will tell you my story. Oh, please do, all of them cried, except the cross little fan in the corner, who shut herself up with a snap and went to sleep. To begin with, said the feathered fan, you must know I am not for sale. What is that? Who said so? What are you here for, then? I understood we were all for sale, etc., 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 came from the other fans. Listen, and I will tell you all about it. I am only loaned for this occasion by the young Duchess of Normanland, who is now visiting New York. She brought me here a few days ago to be mended, and Mr. Tiffany was so carried away with my beauty, please pardon my vanity,
that he begged from the Duchess the privilege of exhibiting me in his fan show. So I shall not have the pleasure of staying with you all for any length of time, which I regret very much. Now for my history. One of the largest ostrich farms in Australia lived the ostrich from which these feathers were plucked. He was the finest bird in the spring hatching, and the man who owned the farm was very proud of him, but not half so proud as the man's little boy and girl to whom he really belonged. The children had begged their father for a pet ostrich to be their very own, and he had promised to let them select one themselves. This was a difficult thing for them to do because all of the baby ostriches were so cunning and pretty with their big eyes, tiny faces, and plump little balls of bodies covered with a rough coat of brown and gray, and their heads and necks of soft colors like a tiger skin. But finally, after great deliberation, a sturdy little fellow was chosen, and many happy hours were spent in feeding and watching their pet grow tall and strong. At last he was 5 feet high and could pull them around in a little cart made for that purpose. They called him Ula Bula. It was a pretty sight to see the boy mounted on his back, driving him with scarlet reins covered with bells that jingled merrily as Ula Bula ran with him round the carriage drive. Always. The children loved him dearly, and he was their only playmate, as their farm was far away from any neighbors. Ula's feathers grew longer and handsomer every day, and the farmer used to say he was a very expensive pet, and often threatened to pluck out the feathers and send them to England, as that was his most profitable market, and he knew Ula Bula's feathers would bring twice as much as any other birds in the flock. But the children would cry so at the idea of parting with their pet that the farmer at last changed his mind. Ula's large coop was kept underneath the children's window on the ground floor, and he would waken them by tapping on their shutters with his bill, as much as to say, "Get up, come and feed me." And when the window was opened, in would go his head and long neck, searching for something to eat. Uh-oh. I can see where this is going. Yes, that is exactly what it would say. Plump little balls of bodies. One day, when he was doing this, the window sash fell on his neck and nearly choked him to death. He was quickly rescued by the children, but after that nothing would induce him to put his head in, for the ostrich is a very timid bird. One night, during a thunderstorm, Ula Bula was stolen from his coop, and for 3 days there was a grand search for him, not only for the children's sake, but because he was so valuable on account of his splendid covering of long, full plumes. He was found at last in a small village miles away. An ostrich thief had sold him to a man for a small price, so the children were able to buy him back. You can imagine their joy to have him home once more. After that he was chained in his cage, and a little dog was left outside at night to watch over him. But poor Ula Bula was never the same. He lost his spirits, he refused to eat, and slept most of the time with his head tucked under his wing. They did everything for him, but he moped, and at last he died. The children were heartbroken and could not be comforted. When they went to bed, they could not sleep for thinking of their pet. What should they do without him? For they would never see him again. The boy heard his father give the order to the men to carry him away in the morning to be plucked. While they were talking it over, the boy said to his sister, "Oh, Fanny, I have an idea. Do you remember those stuffed birds we saw in the window of that shop in town the last time we were there? Now, why not ask Papa to have Ula Bula stuffed? I know it would cost a lot, but they could throw in our Christmas and birthday money, and that would help." Fanny clapped her hands in glee and said, "Why, Jack, That would be splendid and such a comfort, for then we would feel he was still with us. We will ask Papa in the morning. I feel so comforted, I think I can go to sleep now." The mother of the children overheard their conversation and repeated it to her husband, who promised to see what could be done. "But," he added, "I must pick out the finest and longest wing feathers, for in this morning's mail I had a letter from London firm telling me to express them at once 16 beautiful feathers, for which they offered me £10. You can imagine the children's joy when their father consented to have Ulabula stuffed. With their permission, the handsomest wing feathers were taken out to help pay for the work, and that day he was sent to the nearest town to a taxidermist, a man who stuffs birds. The children were in a wild state of excitement the day Ulabula came back. When they saw him so still and stiff, they burst out crying. But soon they comforted themselves with the thought that it was better to have him cold and unresponsive than not to have him at all. That's so morbid. That's so morbid. They begged to keep him in their room, but the mother had a much better idea. She placed him beside the newel post of the oaken staircase, and from his beak was suspended a beautiful old brass lantern with colored glass, so that Ulabula became a thing of beauty and joy forever to the children, and was useful as well as ornamental. It was their privilege to take turns each night in lighting the lamp. I never saw the children again, for we feathers were soon sent to the jewelers in London. Oh, that awful trip! We were so homesick for our playmates and longed for the fresh air. I do know that they do. I could never. Like, I really don't think I could. It would disturb me too much. Like, I miss my babies. I do. But I think seeing them there lifeless would just upset me way too much. Norman Bates. Has you laughing. We had a most exciting time on that voyage, I can tell you, for there was a fire, and if it had not been for the fact of our being in a tin box, we should have all been burned up. The fire was put out after much excitement, and the use of a fire hose for 2 days. Well, we reached London finally, and the London jeweler was surprised at our beauty. We were so full and long. 12 of us were selected and put through a horrid bleaching process, but we were glad afterward when we saw ourselves come out so white and handsome. "My, but she's so conceited," 2 odd little Japanese fans whispered to each other. We were very anxious as to what would happen next, but we soon knew, for we were shown to a gentleman who came to order a fan for his bride, and he told the jeweler it must be the handsomest fan he had ever made. He was to spare no expense, as it was to be one of his bridal gifts to the Lady Marguerite Annesley, whom he was to marry shortly. This wedding, I heard the jeweler telling someone, was to be on a magnificent scale, as the families of the bride and groom were people of the old nobility and of great wealth. The Duke of Normanland was only 25 and the bride just 19. The jeweler had his workmen to make several designs for the sticks of the fan. He selected a pale yellow tortoise shell. They had to send to Naples for the shell. And running down one of the outside sticks were to be Marguerites, done in pearls, and the bride's name, the same as the flower, set in diamonds, on the other side stick. And on the other outside stick was to be a little mirror set in rare pearls. Yeah, 25 and 19. Yeah. Considering he's a duke, she's most likely also a member of the aristocracy. So she was probably groomed to be married to him or somebody close like that too. You can all look at me, said the feather fan. See, here is her name on this side of me. Marguerite. Pretty name, is it not? But not nearly so lovely as my sweet young mistress. On the other side is the mirror, but that does not mean that she is in vain. Oh, no. And look at Ulabula's feathers. Aren't they just perfect? And she shook herself with pride. Very fine, said one fan. So soft and white, said another. Much too showy, the little cross fan was heard to murmur in a sleepy way in her corner. It must be grand to belong to such a smart person, said another. You can always be thrown into aristocratic company. A dainty pink feather fan, whose feathers were not nearly so long or handsome, whispered to her neighbor, Too heavy, my dear, like all English designs. If her mistress is a small woman, it must make her tired to carry her an evening through. Oh, but she don't, answered the big fan. Oh, but she don't, answered the big fan, who had overheard her rival. She has me dangling on a beautiful chatelaine of rare workmanship, a bridal present from her 2 little brothers. It's not too bad, but they're young. Speaking of these little brothers, I wish you fans could have been at the wedding. It was like a fairy tale, and made one think of a fairy godmother might be lurking behind a pillar of grand old Westminster Abbey. The little brothers of the bride walked behind her as pages, bearing her costly satin train. They were dressed in suits of white velvet and wore white felt hats, in each of which a long white plume of Ulabula was fastened with a buckle of diamonds. Oh, it was a most impressive sight. I have traveled quite a good deal since, as the Duke and Duchess are now on a tour around the world in their own steam yacht. They may go to Australia, as the Duke owns much land there, and if they do, who knows? I may see Jack and Fanny again. I have never forgotten them. A hum of admiration and a chorus of thanks greeted the end of this story. One fan, to the right of the feather fan, said, That is very interesting, but I cannot help thinking of poor Ulabula and the children's grief at losing him. The ending, however, was happy as mine, although I too went through many trials and strange experiences. If I thought you were not all too sleepy, I would tell you my story. Oh, we are not too sleepy, said most of the fans. We would love to hear your story. It will be a great pleasure to me to give you the history of my life, and I thank you in advance for your kind attention. Oh, she must be French, said the saucy little gauze fans. She's so suave and polite. Won't you kindly begin? They entreated. So now we've got the story of the lace fan. So let's, it doesn't say the color. Probably white. If it's a lace fan, it's probably white. Let me see if I can pull one up. There's so many that they're just like, let's see, lace fan vintage. Historical Emporium. I'm gonna go with this one, a Battenberg lace fan, maybe. Yeah, this one's yellowed. Let me see. Let me visit this. Historical Emporium. This one's not, like, it's not, it's ivory. Let me see. Is Battenberg lace? It's not Spanish lace. We think it's French. So let's try it that way. French lace fan vintage. Not vintage, vintage. Ah, yeah, here we go. Chantilly lace, maybe. How old is Chantilly lace?
Oh, I guarantee it has to have been a Chantilly lace fan. Okay. We'll go with this one. What do you mean, wood file? No, give me the picture. Give me the picture. Here we go. I know the song's in your head now. Chantilly lace, pretty ponytail hanging down. Here we go. Oh, that's a tiny picture. There's a Chantilly lace fan. I'm pretty sure that's got to be it. Considering these are like at a fan show, that would be a gorgeous one to put on show. I would 100% want that. Right? Gorgeous. Okay, let me see. This book is so cute. I do like it. It's way better. I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. I'm glad I bought this book. It was the most expensive one I bought. It was like $6. Doesn't seem expensive, but everything else is like $3. I was like, do I want this? It looks weird. I'll buy it. After this chapter, we will be halfway through the book. Well, halfway through chapter-wise. Pale green dress with opera gloves. Chapter 4, Story of the Lace Fan. My story begins in a picturesque old convent situated in the Pyrenees, a range of mountains on the southern boundary of France, and in it lives a small community of nuns called the Little Sisters of the Poor. Oh yeah, that would look nice. With white opera gloves? Their convent has stood for centuries, overlooking a beautiful valley, and was originally a robber castle with a fortress during the wars of the Moors, and now it shelters the sweet sisterhood who spend their lives in deeds of loving mercy in his name. Long years ago, the convent was founded by a princess who was driven through sorrow to retire from the world. In her rides over the mountains, she noticed the half-ruined fortress, and afterward asked the king, her father, to rebuild the castle, and here it was that the princess established her sisterhood. You get a fan, and you get a fan. In those days, the lives of their sisters were spent in visiting the poor and sick among the isolated hamlets scattered through the mountains, and at times rescuing people who had lost their way in the furious rain and snowstorms which often visit that part of the country. The convent flourished for many years after the death of the princess, who was the first Mother Superior, and in time a chapel was added, in the tower of which a bright light burned every night to guide the weary wanderer on his way, while by day a cheery bell marked the hours as they passed, a welcome sound to the shepherds watching their flocks on the lonely hillsides, as well as to the weary laborer in the field. Later, a large brass cross was added to the tower, which could be seen for miles around, and to many of the poor people it was a great comfort. Then came a time when the convent was deserted, as the sisterhood died out and there was no money to carry it on. But about 50 years ago it was granted by the crown to the present order of sisters, who are again celebrated for their deeds of charity and for being among the finest lace makers in France. And it was there I had my beginning. Quite a thrill of interest now went through the fans. They were all wide awake. One night, while a snowstorm was raging, a violent ringing of the bell that hung over the convent gate was heard just as the nuns were going to bed. They stopped to listen, but thought it was only the wind. But no, there it was again, this time ringing continuously. The night watchman on duty in the hospital was sent to the gate. With the aid of his lantern, he peered into the darkness, but at first saw nothing. He was about to slam to the gate, quite cross about having been sent on a fruitless errand, when he heard a sound, a faint cry, and looking down at his feet saw a large basket. He was almost afraid to open it, but when he lifted the lid, there lay a dear little baby blinking its eyes at the light and smiling in the sweetest way.
He quickly drew the basket in, locked the gate, and almost ran with his queer burden to the convent. You can imagine the surprise of the sisters when they saw the contents of the basket. Many were the conjectures concerning it. There was pinned to the baby's dress a note written in French as follows: "To God's loving protection and your care I leave my baby. Call her Marie after the Christ Mother. Make her a good Christian, and teach her always to pray for her distracted mother." In the basket were pretty clothes for the baby, all very fine and simple, proving that she was not of lowly birth. The nuns had the region around searched, thinking they might find the person who had brought the child, but no one had been seen carrying a basket. They therefore felt that the baby had been sent to them for some good purpose and decided to keep her. Little Marie soon became the pet of the convent and the light of their very eyes. Just then a very dainty little gauze fan, fresh from the workroom, fell off its stand and had gone fast asleep. It was not old enough to have a history, and was too young to be interested in a story, so had fallen a prey to the Sandman, just as young children do. On seeing this, the lace fan said, "Perhaps I had better stop here. You may not be interested." "Oh, yes, we are, but hurry to the point where you come in." "Well, to continue, Marie grew up to be the dearest little girl. How could she help it in that atmosphere of purity and love? When she was 9, the nuns began to teach her to make lace, and so great was her aptitude and rare taste in designing that at 14 she was one of their best workers. About this time she became very ambitious to create something original and decided to make a fan. She drew a lovely design. It was a boat in the form of a shell drawn across a pretty pond by 6 graceful swans, and the shell boat was full of little cupids. On the reins they were driving the swans were the garlands of flowers. This design she submitted to the sisters, and received their permission to begin it at once. Marie became much absorbed in her work, and it grew so under her deft fingers that she could hardly tear herself away from it even for her organ practicing. She wanted to finish it within a year. Not many miles from the convent is situated, you must know, the town of Pau, a celebrated watering place and a great resort for invalids and sightseers. During the season, the sisters founded a good market for their laces, and visitors would drive to the convent almost every day to see the lace makers at work. The Queen of Spain and the Empress of France often gave orders for lace, and a beautiful shawl that had taken 3 nuns 2 years to make had just been finished for the latter. It was still at the convent, and many people came to see it. Among the number was an American lady, Mrs. Horace Lovett, an admirer of everything artistic and beautiful. She became so much interested not only in the laces, but in the lace makers, their way of living, and their deeds of charity, that they took her all over the building, and with special pride showed her the small hospital connected with the convent, which was most important, as it was the only one in the neighborhood. On their return to the convent, in one of the rooms, seated at a large window, sat Marie, bending over the cushion upon which her piece of lace lay, with its myriad little pins holding it down. The sunlight was resting on her golden hair, and showed to advantage the finely cut outlines of her lovely face, which had the pure look of the painted Madonna hanging above her head. Have you guys seen lace being made before? I love watching bobbin lace being made. Let me see if I can find a video. It's so amazing to watch, and I wish I could make it. I had to convince myself not to buy this stuff to do it. Okay. Let me see. Okay. This one is in green. And this one's in span, but let me see if I can.
get the page. Let me see if I can cast it without showing off my stuff. Hold on. Dang, let me close a whole bunch of windows. What if I put it here? Hold on. Dun, 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 dun. Browser? Maybe if that'll work. No, I don't think it'll be browser source. Maybe? There you go. See how it's being done? Those little bobbins, the way she's twisting them around her fingers, literally that's how it's made. And when she pulls them apart, you can see up top the fans. You can see the pin. She just moved it and put it down. That's what you have to do. That holds it in place as it keeps knotting and like twisting to make that. I want to do that, but I could never. I don't have the patience. But like, look at that. Like, just over and under. It doesn't look like she's doing anything, but there is a fan being made there. Isn't that crazy? It's absolutely wild to me. It's stunning. It's gorgeous. I literally was looking at, because I have the thread. I have thread like that size. And I was like, I could do it. My mother was like, don't you dare buy those bobbins. So I will not. I'll just stick with making doilies. Okay, let's see. When she heard the steps, she rose quickly to greet the Mother Superior and her guest. Mrs. Lovett could not take her eyes from the child's face. She then asked to see her work, before which she stood in still in silent wonder. This the work of a child! How came she to be here? She had seen no other children in the convent, and her curiosity was aroused. She followed the sister to the door, then turned back, bent over the little worker, kissed her affectionately, and laid some roses she had in her hand on the child's lap. Seeing the Mother Superior's surprise, she said, I must explain my impulse to embrace this child. 2 years ago I lost a daughter about her age and singularly like her, and this resemblance quite upsets me. Tell me about her. The Mother Superior bade her sit down and told the story while Marie worked. This was how I knew all about it, and I can assure you I was interested, and so was Mrs. Lovett, for I watched her face as she sat near me. The next day she returned with Mr. Lovett, who offered 400 francs for me when finished. I was surprised to hear I was worth so much, and wondered if the nuns would sell Marie's work, but she was wild to let Mrs. Lovett have it, as she wanted to give the first money she had earned to the hospital. I was almost finished, and Marie promised to work on me steadily, to have me ready in a month for the dear lady who had kissed her so tenderly. Every day or two Mrs. Lovett would come to the convent on some pretext or other, to bring flowers for the chapel or dainties for the sick people in the hospital, but she never left without a talk with Marie, who was growing dearer to her every day. These visits were the happiest events of the child's life. As she worked, the dear lady would talk to her of the faraway lands she had visited, or of her home in that wonderful America, until Marie would imagine it a veritable fairyland. The world beyond her mountain home was a great mystery to her. The only other place she had ever seen was Pau, where she had once gone to hear a great cardinal celebrate high mass, and she had come home quite bewildered with all the sights she had seen, and the beautiful music had never been forgotten. It was the last of September, and I was completed, all but a little corner, and in this corner Mrs. Lovett had asked Marie to work her own name and date. Mrs. Lovett came for me the day I was finished, and took Marie into the garden for a last talk before saying goodbye.
As soon as they were seated, Marie burst into tears. Mrs. Lovett folded her in her motherly arms and tried to comfort her. She knew, without asking, that the painful thought of separation was affecting the child. "Oh, if only I could go with you and always be your little girl." Mrs. Lovett started at these words, for she had been thinking for days of the possibility of such a thing. She had not liked to propose it to the sisters, knowing how they loved the child and also how profitable her lace-making was to them. The latter difficulty she thought she could overcome by a little scheme, and she and Mr. Lovett had decided upon, namely, in memory of their daughter who had died, to donate to the convent the sum of $5,000 to be used for their hospital and other charitable works. They had learned to respect and love these good women, and they fully realized that Marie's young and sunny nature was the one bright thing in the dull convent life. However, so great was their desire to adopt the child that the proposal was made, and the nuns asked for some time to consider. After long consultations and prayers for guidance in their decision, they thought it best to part with Marie, as her lungs were delicate, and the bleak mountain air did not altogether agree with her. Yes, it certainly would be best, although all realized what loneliness would be theirs without her sweet young presence. When Marie heard the decision, she was filled with mixed feelings of joy and sorrow, glad with the thought of never again being separated from her adopted mother, and saddened by the thought of leaving the dear friends who had brought her up so tenderly. But, childlike, she was pleased too with the thought of change and travel. The next day Marie left amid the tears of the good sisters, who followed her to the gate, the same gate at which she had been found nearly 15 years before, a half-frozen little baby. These unselfish sisters of charity, well named, were giving up a great deal of the sunshine of their lives, but Mrs. Lovett consoled them with the promise of bringing her back whenever she came to Europe, which she frequently did. After a few days in Pau, the Lovetts started for Rome, where they wanted Marie to see the wonderful art treasures of the Eternal City, and then they would go to Egypt, hoping there to avoid the cough that the child had every winter. I heard Mrs. Lovett also tell Marie that perhaps in Rome they would find a suitable mounting for me, as she was proud of Marie's handiwork. I was put in a pretty jewel box where I was very comfortable, and then into Mrs. Lovett's satchel, so that she could constantly take a peep at me. One evening, as their diligence was passing over a lonely part of the mountains, they were attacked by brigands, who treated them rudely and searched their belongings for valuables. No one was hurt, but all were badly frightened. Poor Marie fainted, and Mrs. Lovett was inconsolable because her satchel, containing the treasured piece of lace, was stolen. "That was you, I suppose," one of the fans here exclaimed, "but do go on." I've never thought of mountain air as harsh. Me neither. I find it to be very soothing. But I guess if you have weak lungs, it's possible that the cold would exacerbate a bit. Well, my friends, I shuddered when the dirty hands of those ruffians touched me. One of them was so infuriated when he found it was only a little bit of lace in the jewel box that he threw me away with a curse, and I landed in a mud puddle at the side of the road, from which I was rescued next day by a peddler, who put me in his pocket, saying, "Perhaps some of the girls in the next village will give me some sous for that." Sous, indeed. Oh, thought I, if only you knew how much I am worth, you ignorant old beggar. You see, I was cross and dirty. He gave me a bath at the first spring we came to, and a cold one it was, too, but I felt more comfortable, although the dirt was not entirely washed out, and I dare say this was the reason none of the village girls would buy me. "Ah, well," said the peddler, "I will take it home to my wife." He lived in a country town just outside of Genoa. When he unfastened his pack and showed it to his wife what he had brought her from his travels, she was not at all pleased with the dirty piece of lace, and threw me with great disgust across the table to her little girl, saying, "Here, Maria, you can dress your doll with that." My, but I was glad to be once more in the hands of a child, and a child named Maria. It made me think of the sweet little Marie to whom I owed my existence. I had seen so much and been through so many exciting experiences that I wished myself back at the convent where I had led a peaceful life, for I had given up all hopes of seeing my real owners again from the moment when I watched them going off on the coach after the brigands had taken away everything they had of value. "Did you ever see them again?" interrupted all the fans. Even the cross little fan was listening now. "Ah, you must have patience. I am coming to that." One morning, Maria had wrapped me around her doll as a shawl, as she only used me for dressed-up occasions, I felt we were off on a holiday trip. This time it was a street pageant in Genoa. We went to a cousin of the peddler, a pawnbroker, whose shop was on a street where the procession would pass. I kept hearing a clicking sound on the other side of my room. He had a chair in his doorway, and taking Maria in his arms, he was holding her up when suddenly he spied the doll. "So the dolly must see too," he exclaimed. Then he caught sight of me. "Why, Maria, where did you get this piece of lace?" The peddler explained, and the pawnbroker said, "Let me have it, and I will give Maria 5 lire for it, for her bank." This seemed a large price to the peddler, who jumped at the offer, and made me jump too by the way he jerked me off the doll. If the pin had not given way, I should have been torn to pieces. But my feelings were hurt. Maria began to cry, but was consoled with a bright yellow silk handkerchief covered with green and purple flowers. So again I passed into other hands. How would I be treated now? For I, a little piece of lace, was having a great many experiences. The pawnbroker did not realize my full value, for he was a coarse man, but he knew enough to send me to a cleaner's, where I was most carefully treated and came back looking quite natural, though rather stiff with the starch. The old man put me in a drawer under the counter until he could buy a piece of black velvet to spread me on in his window and so to attract a customer. But alas, that night he was taken ill, died of pneumonia a week later, and the shop was closed. There I was, wrapped in paper in the dark drawer. No one knew of my whereabouts. What was to happen next? Was I never to reach the end for which I was intended, namely to be a fan and see something of the grand world I had heard Mrs. Lovett and Marie talking about? Oh, to get back to her again, to be kept in some pretty perfumed box. I knew I was lovely enough to lie on a bed of roses. Instead, I was lying in a tobacco-smelling, stuffy old drawer. I was discouraged. My outlook seemed hopeless indeed, especially as week after week passed, and there seemed no sign of release. The shop was closed after the funeral, and no one ever came in but the mice, which scampered around and frightened me so. One day I heard a mouse in the drawer next to me. I said to myself, surely he will get in here next. I knew he was a hungry mouse, and therefore desperate, and might nibble on me for the sake of the starch the cleaner had put in me. He climbed from one drawer to the other, each second getting nearer. I could hear him gnawing hungrily at things as he passed them. His little teeth at last tore away my paper covering, and he began nibbling at the largest flower on me when the door was suddenly opened, and away flew the scared little mouse. Indeed, my dears, if I had not had so much starch in me, I should have been quite limp from fright. Then I heard 2 men talking, and one voice I recognized as that of my old friend the peddler, who was explaining to the man with him that he had come to take possession of the house and its belongings, as the pawnbroker had died without a will, and he was proved next of kin by the courts. I was rejoiced that I should see my little friend Maria so soon again. She had been very fond of me, and was such a picturesque little Italian maid with her black curls and big black eyes. Her doll was not so pretty, a little the worse for wear, but she had always looked very presentable when I had been pinned around her shoulders. After a few days of house cleaning, the family moved in, and Maria was ordered to clean out the drawers under the counter. You can imagine her delight when she discovered me. "Oh, madre mia," she cried. "See what I have found, my dolly's lace shawl, and it looks so clean and nice." And she danced round the room with me. Her joy did not last long, for the peddler took me away from her, saying, "No, indeed," for if the shrewd broker had given 5 liras for it, it must be worth more, much more, and he was going to sell it if he could. In a few days I was put in the shop window, stretched on a piece of black velvet, and I had a lovely time basking in the sunshine and seeing people go by. It was very interesting to watch the faces of the people as they looked in the window, and I amused myself by making up stories about them. I learned a great deal of life as the years went by. I was always looking out for my lost friends, but in vain. As new things were crowded into the window, I was pushed back in the corner almost out of sight, and it was not at all promising that I should ever get away from my surroundings of rubbish, when one day I saw two gentlemen pointing, I thought, directly at me, and whispering to each other. I was excited. I hoped they wanted to buy me. I liked their looks. They did come in and offered 25 lire for me, and Maria's mother was very glad to let me go for such a good price. When they were outside, I heard one of the gentlemen say, "If I am not mistaken, I think we have made a good bargain. The design and texture of this lace is exquisite and old. I know Mr. Tiffany will be delighted with it, and I shall order some mother-of-pearl sticks for it to take back with me." Aha, I thought at last, I am being appreciated, and I was happier than I had been for years. Of course, my new owner was one of Mr. Tiffany's agents, sent to Italy to collect fans for this exhibition, so I found myself in the company of many fans, which were being packed in a large trunk, and we were all to start for New York so soon as a rare little fan could be secured from an impoverished artist named Raphael Bertini, who was most unwilling to part with it, as it was the last of all his beautiful objets d'art, the others having been sold to pay his debts. Here the little cross fan in the corner was heard to sob aloud. "Oh, I was that fan, and he my poor unfortunate master. Why was I taken from my home? I hate this America, where everything is so strange, so new and inartistic. I was happy in Italy, where my surroundings were old like myself, and nothing jarred on my reflections about the past. I was valued above everything my owner possessed. Art collectors, celebrities, and even royalties had been to see me, and had listened to my history told by my owner as I was held lovingly in his hand. My story interested them more than it would you, I dare say, though I did belong to a queen." At this a thrill of excitement and interest ran through the case. "Who would have thought she was of such importance?" they whispered to one another. "But there," said the little cross fan, "I shall not tell you any more of my story now. I see you are thinking me a weak-minded old fool, and you are crazy to hear at the end of the lace fan's story. It is but natural. She is much younger than I, and everything that is new goes in this country. Please excuse my interruption," this to the lace fan. "Pray continue." "Why," said the lace fan, "this is a coincidence. I dare say we crossed the ocean in the same trunk. I wish I had known you were so near," she added in a sympathetic voice. To continue, when I was unpacked and shown to Mr. Tiffany, he was very enthusiastic over me and said, "It looks like an old Spanish pattern of lace that one rarely sees nowadays." The pearl sticks he found very suitable also, the carving having evidently been done by an expert Japanese workman. At this the little cross fan remarked, "Well, you are an interesting combination. You were begun in the Pyrenees, a part of you Japanese, and you were finished in the New World. Now I wonder if a lady from Siberia will buy you." And they all chuckled over this little sally. "I am already sold," said the lace fan. "What?" exclaimed the others. "Before the exhibition? That is odd." "Wait a moment. I am coming to the strangest part of my strange adventures," said the lace fan. "Did you see me taken out of the case this morning?" Yes, we remember." "Well, I was sent to Mr. Tiffany's room with 6 other fans from another case. I heard Mr. Tiffany say to some ladies, whom I could not see for I was in my box, how I have chosen 7 of the handsomest lace fans in my collection, since your daughter has set her heart on a lace one. I will reserve the gem for the last. I must ask you, Mrs. Lovett." At this name I almost jumped out of my box and tried to push up the lid to take a look, not to tell anyone that you have seen these fans before the public exhibition tomorrow. I have only made this exception in your favor because you are one of my oldest customers, and because it is to be your daughter's bridal fan. "Oh," Oh dear, if I could only see the daughter! It was very exciting waiting to see which fan would be kept for the last, for that would be the gem of which Mr. Tiffany had spoken. I knew the other fans would be just as anxious as I to be chosen for a wedding fan. So romantic, you know. I was the most excited because I wanted to know if it was my Mrs. Lovett and my beloved Marie. 5 fans had been examined and rejected, but I could tell by their exclamations that the 6th was making an impression. They finally decided upon it, and my heart sank. Oh, if only I could make myself heard. By this time I was almost sure I had recognized Mrs. Lovett's voice. They were preparing to leave when Mr. Tiffany said, "You had better let me show you this one. You may like it better." Now you can imagine my joy when taken from the box to see before me a most beautiful girl, and it was Marie, lovelier than ever. Would she know me? No need to ask. The moment she unfolded me, she gave a gasp of delight. "Oh, Mamma, see! There is my name in the corner. It is my very own work made so long ago at the convent." Mr. Tiffany was looking on with great astonishment. "Tell him all about it, Mamma. I cannot speak for joy." And she actually covered me with kisses. Mr. Tiffany was deeply interested in the story, and at its finish, he said, "Miss Marie, you must accept this fan as a wedding gift from an old friend of your mother. Never have I given one that has afforded me so much pleasure." Marie replied it would be her most treasured one, and was profuse in her thanks. "Now," said he, "the fan must not be taken away, as it is catalogued for the exhibition tomorrow, but I will mark it sold." She parted from me with great reluctance, saying she would return bright and early the next morning to have another look at me. And so, my dear friends, this ends my story. I thank you for your patience, but you will feel repaid tomorrow when you see the beautiful face of my dear Marie. Enthusiastic thanks followed this story, which had aroused them all thoroughly, even the cross little fan, who said she was very anxious to hear the story of a modest little painted fan on the stand next to hers, because she was sure it would be interesting. "She is beautifully painted," she said, "and I set myself up as a good judge, you know. One does not often see such careful workmanship nowadays. It seems to me works of art are turned out by the hundreds. I should say that quantity and not quality seems to be the demand, in fans at any rate." At this there was a general titter, because the cross fan was so tiny, and the feather fan, who plumed herself on her size, opened herself as wide as possible, and looking down on the little cross fan, whispered to her neighbor, "Just listen to that shabby, insignificant little thing. She is only envious because she is not large and imposing like us." The cross little fan heard half the whisper. "Insignificant, am I? Just wait until you learn my story. You will change your minds." "Pray tell it to us now," they politely said to the cross little fan, but by this time she had shut herself up tight, and could not be induced to say a word more. "Then please let us have your story, you lovely painted fan." "I will tell it with pleasure," she courteously replied, and each little fan arranged herself decorously on her stand to listen. And we're going to stop there because we are halfway through the book. We will begin next time with Chapter 5, the story of the painted fan. And there are only 3 chapters left, but the last 3 are the longest ones. So the last 3 stories are the painted fan, the little cross fan, and the Chinese fan. So we shall get to those next time. Thank you for the bit. Welcome in, Otaku. What did you think? So what did you guys think of the book so far? I'm obsessed. I love it. It's so good. I was not expecting this. I'm really happy. It is relaxing, and it's kind of cute. And you get a little bit of history of different fans, you know? As strange as it is. Stand. Stretch. Check on my spider. He's still kind of hunkered in there. I'm going to be so obnoxious to him. Constantly opening and checking. Oh, he's moving. He's picked up his paw like, how dare you touch me? There, spray a little more liquid into his cage. Yay! Cole is still alive. I meant to get up and also get my headset. I think after we're done with this book, I just realized I still have the other video going. Is it not gone yet? Where? Wait, I'm baffled. I can't. The thing is going. I hear it in the background. I'm going crazy. Hold on. I can hear the clicking of that video and I closed it out. Okay, there we go. It stopped on my side. That was weird. So yeah, stories of different fans. That's really exciting. But now we know what that clicking sound. Oh my god, was it going for you this entire time too? Why didn't anyone tell me? Oh, I just now heard it because I didn't have my headset on. So now I'm like, I heard it and I was like, oh my god, I hope that wasn't playing in the background the entire time. It was like click, 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 click of the bobbin lace. Okay, let's see. Who's streaming? Let's go visit Silky. He's recoloring his model. It's been a while since we've gone to see him. So let's pop in to visit Mr. Silk. All right. Thank you for coming in to everyone tonight. So tomorrow, probably around 2 p.m. Central Time, I will be back for more Atomfall. I'm super excited to play it. And since it's Sunday, I can stream for several hours of pure chaos. So let's get on over. Thank you for everyone for coming in. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.